Twists and turns, 10 scandalous presidential elections in history. The path to political power is often marred by controversy, and presidential elections are no exception. From backroom deals to public scandals, the pursuit of the highest office in the land can reveal the darker side of politics. This video explores 10 of the most scandalous presidential elections in history, including notable examples from the United States, each characterized by shocking, controversial, and intriguing facts. Number 1. Liberian presidential election, Charles D.B. King. In the 1927 Liberian presidential election, Charles D.B. King, running for the true Whig Party, achieved a dubious distinction in electoral history. King won an astonishing 234,000 votes against his opponent, Thomas J. Faulkner of the People's Party, who received around 9,000 votes. What made this election particularly notorious was the fact that there were only about 15,000 registered voters in Liberia at that time. This massive discrepancy indicated an unprecedented level of electoral fraud. The enormity of the vote rigging in this election was so significant that it was recognized by the Guinness Book of World Records as the most fraudulent election ever reported in history. This election is a glaring example of the lengths to which political leaders will go to secure power, regardless of democratic principles. Number 2. 1960 U.S. presidential election, Kennedy vs. Nixon. The 1960 presidential election between John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon is remembered for its extremely close result and allegations of voter fraud. Kennedy won by a narrow margin, securing 303 electoral votes to Nixon's 219, and a mere 0.1% lead in the popular vote. However, the election was marred by accusations of voter fraud, particularly in Illinois and Texas, states crucial to Kennedy's victory. In Illinois, where Kennedy won by just over 8,000 votes, allegations surfaced of vote rigging in Chicago, orchestrated by Mayor Richard Daley's powerful Democratic machine. Similarly, in Texas, controlled by Kennedy's running mate Lyndon B. Johnson, there were accusations of ballot stuffing. Despite these allegations, Nixon chose not to pursue an official investigation, stating it would cause a constitutional crisis, and conceded the election. This decision was seen as a move to avoid deepening political divisions, but it left lingering questions about the integrity of the electoral process. Number 3. 2016 U.S. presidential election, Donald Trump vs. Hillary Clinton. The 2016 U.S. presidential election between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton was marked by unprecedented controversy. Trump's bold rhetoric, exemplified by his remark, "I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody, and I wouldn't lose any voters," highlighted his unconventional campaigning style and the unwavering loyalty of his supporters. The election was further embroiled in controversy due to Russian interference aimed at favoring Trump, involving cyber attacks and misinformation, as confirmed by U.S. intelligence agencies. Additionally, the FBI's investigation into Clinton's use of a private email server became a central campaign issue. Trump's comment during a debate, "Because you'd be in jail," directed at Clinton, added to the contentious atmosphere. These factors combined to make the 2016 election one of the most scandalous in U.S. history. Number 4. Teddy Roosevelt on President William McKinley. Teddy Roosevelt, known for his forthright and sometimes abrasive manner of speaking, made a notably harsh comment about President William McKinley, calling him a fathead, with the brains of a guinea pig. This cutting remark was reflective of Roosevelt's personal assessment of McKinley's leadership qualities. Roosevelt, who served as McKinley's vice president before succeeding him after McKinley's assassination in 1901, often disagreed with McKinley's more conservative approach to policy and leadership. His comment underscores the stark contrast in their personalities and leadership styles, Roosevelt's bold and action-oriented demeanor versus McKinley's more reserved and cautious approach. This quote exemplifies Roosevelt's blunt and unfiltered communication style, which was both admired and criticized during his political career. Number 5. Lyndon B. Johnson on Gerald Ford. Lyndon B. Johnson's remark about Gerald Ford, "He can't fart and chew gum at the same time," was emblematic of the rough-and-tumble nature of political discourse at the time and reflected the often personal nature of political rivalries. Johnson's comment came during a period of intense political division and social change in the United States, including the Vietnam War and the Civil Rights Movement. In this context, Ford represented the opposition party in Congress, and Johnson's crude assessment was more than just a personal jab, it was indicative of the broader partisan and ideological battles of the era. These tensions often resulted in personal attacks and harsh rhetoric, as political figures grappled with the nation's polarized atmosphere. Number 6. 1824 U.S. presidential election, the corrupt bargain. The scandal in the 1824 presidential election stemmed from the perception of backroom deals and political machinations that appeared to override the will of the voters. Andrew Jackson's failure to secure the presidency despite winning a plurality of both the popular and electoral votes raised questions about the fairness of the electoral process. The subsequent appointment of Henry Clay as Secretary of State by John Quincy Adams, after Clay's apparent support in the House, led many to believe that a corrupt agreement had been made at the expense of democratic principles. This incident not only cast a shadow over Adams's presidency but also fueled a sense of injustice among Jackson and his supporters, leading to significant political repercussions and the eventual establishment of the Democratic Party. Number 7. Ronald Reagan joking about bombing Russia. Ronald Reagan's joke about bombing Russia, "We begin bombing in 5 minutes," though said in jest, occurred in a period marked by high stakes in international diplomacy and the ever-present threat of nuclear conflict. The Cold War era was characterized by a continuous state of political tension and military competition between the United States and the Soviet Union. Reagan's comment, despite being a lighthearted moment, inadvertently tapped into the era's pervasive fears and anxieties about nuclear war. It underscored the importance of careful communication by world leaders and the potential for even offhand remarks to escalate tensions. This incident illustrated how, in the context of delicate international relations, especially during the Cold War, humor could be misconstrued and have unintended consequences, contributing to the overall dirty nature of the political and diplomatic environment. Number 8. U.S. presidential election, Hayes versus Tilden. The 1876 presidential election was scandalous due to its unprecedented level of electoral dispute and the eventual resolution that appeared more like a political bargain than a democratic outcome. Samuel J. Tilden's victory in the popular vote and his initial lead in the electoral count were overshadowed by the controversy over the 20 disputed electoral votes. The involvement of a special electoral commission and the partisan nature of its decision in favor of Rutherford B. Hayes led to widespread allegations of electoral manipulation. The Compromise of 1877, which effectively ended the Reconstruction era, was seen by many as a betrayal of the rights and protections of recently freed African Americans in the South. This agreement to resolve the election controversy had long-term consequences for racial politics and civil rights in the United States, marking the election as one of the most scandalous in American history. Number 9. Benjamin Harrison versus Grover Cleveland. The 1888 presidential election, contested between incumbent President Grover Cleveland and Republican nominee Benjamin Harrison, was marked by controversy and allegations of electoral improprieties. Despite winning the popular vote by a margin of about 90,000 votes, Cleveland lost the Electoral College to Harrison, who secured 233 electoral votes against Cleveland's 168. The election was infamous for allegations of vote buying, particularly in key states like Indiana, Harrison's home state. Reports suggested that funds from business interests were used to influence the vote in favor of Harrison. The Republican Party was accused of utilizing these funds 4 blocks of 5, a scheme where voters were paid to cast their ballots for Harrison. This election is a significant example of how the Electoral College system can result in a president being elected without winning the popular vote and highlighted the potential for corruption within the electoral process. Number 10. 1860 U.S. presidential election, Abraham Lincoln. The 1860 presidential election, in which Republican Abraham Lincoln defeated 3 other candidates, is one of the most consequential in American history. Lincoln's victory, without a single electoral vote from the South, was achieved with less than 40% of the popular vote. His platform, which opposed the expansion of slavery into new U.S. territories, was seen as a direct threat by the Southern states. The election outcome prompted a swift and dramatic response. Within weeks of the election, South Carolina seceded from the Union, followed by several other Southern states. These events led directly to the formation of the Confederate States of America and ultimately to the American Civil War. The election of 1860 thus not only reflected the deeply polarized state of the nation over the issue of slavery but also set the stage for the most devastating conflict in the nation's history, fundamentally altering the course of the United States.